Hello and welcome everybody. We are in the narrative writing class under the digital media production program. And so we have students here. This is the undergraduate module. And we also have members from the public. And I do not want to waste any more time. Let us just begin with our special guest today. We have our very own Adjunct Associate Professor, Renee Pillai, who is also a Hollywood screenwriter. Hello, Renee.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
So I pass it to you, yeah? Because
Yes.
because Renee wants to introduce herself. But let me make you co-host first so that you can share.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Everybody's waiting for this.
Okay. Let me just get the screen on and share it. And is everybody seeing this?
Not yet. Okay. Good.
Okay, cool. So hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about film dialogue, how it's more than just talking, and the different elements that are involved in it. Let me, like Adjunct said, let me introduce myself. I'm trying to move the slide.
You okay there?
Okay, hold on a sec. Okay.
Yep.
So as Adjunct said, I'm a screenwriter. My name is Renee Pillai, and I'm the first Malaysian to have actually won the Academy Nickel Fellowship, which basically gave me the chance to become a member of the Academy family. And we're most known for, I think most people know us for giving out the Oscars. But what it is actually the Motion Picture Academy for kind of like progressing film. And personally, I'm also involved with the affinity groups where we advocate for underrepresented voices, such as minorities, like Asians or African Americans or female voices. I'm currently working both in Hollywood and Malaysia. Pretty much my feature film and TV projects are in Hollywood, and in Malaysia, I'm currently doing short films. So that's my background. But predominantly, I'm a screenwriter. Now, today we're going to talk about dialogue. So what is dialogue? Why do we need dialogue? I'm going to go under three things, which is we're going to explain what the role of dialogue is in film, and then what a dialogue should or shouldn't do. And finally, I'm going to share some tips for writing dialogue. Now, I call it tips. It's actually techniques. And I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find it in books or in classes. But why I call it tips is because it's something that I actually use on a daily basis when I write. So let's go immediately into what dialogue is. Now, the textbook definition of that is it's a conversation between two or more people in a book, in a play, or film. But the interesting thing about film is that dialogue as a conversation can transcend that conversational platform of it being between two or more people. And I'll tell you why. Because there's outer dialogue and there's inner dialogue. Now, everybody's very familiar with what outer dialogue is, which is a character speaking to another character. Now, this can be done directly with two or more people in the same scene. It can be done with somebody speaking in the scene and you hearing another voice off screen, OS, or over the phone where they're talking to somebody else. Now, that is the most, I think, normal or most used form of dialogue that you see in films, even in books and in plays. The other interesting thing is inner dialogue. And that is usually what we say, a conversation between a character and the mind. They're speaking to themselves. And this usually appears in monologues or as VO, voiceovers, where you hear them speak and you hear them answer, but it's the same person. Or they're having a memory of something. Now, there are many schools of thought on this. I've had many interesting discussions with Inti Azrin about it as well. But
Yes.
yeah, it's either you do this, you use it, or you don't. Now, personally, I don't really like to use voiceovers. or have this kind of a device in my screenplays. But at the same time, and I'll be sharing an example with you later, it can be used to great effect if it's done well, but it has to have a compelling reason for being there. So
Yeah, like we discussed before, I'm on the same page as you, Renee. I actually forbid my students from writing monologues because I personally feel that it is a lazy way to try and tell the story. What's your opinion? Would you want to elaborate?
I'm actually of the same mind, which is one of the reasons why I don't really like the use of VOs and monologues in story. In fact, one of the movies that I keep in mind when thinking of this is this old movie. It's called Bonfire of the Vanities, and it starred, I think, Tom Hanks. And what happened was they had to use a VO because the film was so bad. It didn't make any sense. And they needed to use a VO to prop it up. And that's a very bad reason to have any kind of inner dialogue to tell the story, because you shouldn't tell the story. You should always show it happening.
Yeah, unless in special circumstances like the monologue or the voiceover becomes a concept for the film.
Absolutely. There have been great instances when VOs and monologues have been used. I think one of the best things in my mind is this movie called Goodfellas, where the monologue was used to create such a mood of this person's life. And what was interesting was they allowed two characters to have monologues, so you could like tell what's going on in their minds. But it was part of the entire movie. It wasn't something that they pulled out because it was convenient or they couldn't find another way to tell it. It was great usage of that was built in. So you're right, absolutely right. There are instances where it makes sense, but for the most part, it is kind of lazy to use, you know, for want of a better word.
Yeah. However, we see this a lot on TV everywhere, isn't it? Especially in soaps.
Oh yes, well, because soap writing. I think
it's very slippery, yeah, soap.
Yes, well, soap is slippery, and soap opera is even slipperier. So it's like it really depends. I mean, if you're going to look at feature films that you would watch again and again, I think a lot of them do not really use this kind of device. Although it's interesting, but if you're going to use it, there needs to be a compelling reason for it. Yeah. Don't just pull it out because you go like, oh, I want to explain this at this moment. Yeah. That's a very bad thing to do. So anyway, just wanted to...
Enough about monologues.
Yeah, I wanted to differentiate between the different types of dialogue. And now that we know that this exists, it's because whether it's inner or outer dialogue, whichever part it is, the role of dialogue goes in your script, in your film, towards these 3 points. Your dialogue needs to develop characters. The actors, the characters in your story, dialogue will help tell the audience who they are, what they're about, and the story, the journey that they go through. Dialogue also needs to advance plot, which is the main gist of your film, the story of your film. That's what it needs to do. It needs to give the audience enough information to be able to follow the story that's going on. And lastly, dialogue needs to bring the themes of your story to life. Themes, of course, is the overarching message in your story. What is unsaid, what lies beneath the surface. So dialogue has to play these 3 roles. This is how it's important for your film. And the great thing is that great dialogue saves you time because it does all 3 at the same time. But it is really, really difficult to achieve because great dialogue is rare and great dialogue needs a lot of work. But it's because it does double, triple duty, not just the one thing, not just like telling people the information, but bringing themes to life. At the same time, letting you know what this character wants, letting you know where this character comes from, letting you know where the story is going to. So many things lays on the shoulders of dialogue. Now, breaking it down, what I mentioned before, here we can see how it breaks down into character, plot, and theme. In character, when I mentioned traits are revealed through how they speak, what they say, it is personality traits. It's people who are shy, who are timid, introverted, they tend to use different types of words. They tend to be maybe a bit more deferential. They'll use please and thank you a bit more polite. Whereas people who are flamboyant and loud, they have more confidence in the way they speak. Also, so already you can tell what type of character they are just from the words that they're using. The other thing is slang or colloquial speech. If somebody speaks with like a Texas drawl, y'all, you don't have to say much, you know, like he's from the South, he's from Texas, or he's a cowboy. These are inferences that you can draw just from the words that the character speaks and the way that it speaks it. In plot, how dialogue works, of course, that's what everybody seems to think. You use it to tell people what's happening. It's not really, it's an expository role without it being really expositional. Expositional dialogue is terrible because you shouldn't tell everybody what's happening, but you should kind of lead the way to where it's going. It conveys important information, but you don't say it explicitly. And finally, the theme is the underlying purpose of the story. Why are you telling the story? What is the message that you're going to get from it? And good dialogue actually paints that without, again, like in plot, without giving the story away. It's more towards the feeling you get after the dialogue is said that brings the themes to life. So now that we know the role of what dialogue is supposed to do, let's go into the pitfalls that trying to write good or great dialogue can take you into. And that's basically what dialogue should or what dialogue shouldn't do. Now, the reason why I like to say that dialogue is a tricky, tricky beast, and I'm not sure if Vinci Azrin has told you guys this, but dialogue is always been said to be one of the last things you should write. Now, the way I write is scenes come to my mind, sometimes with dialogue, sometimes without. So putting it down on paper, for me, it's just a case of like remembering it. But I will tell you this one thing. After I've written my script, I've written the whole thing, the first draft, and I go through it. Dialogue is the one thing that I keep editing. Not the structure, not the story, not the characters, but the dialogue is something. 10 years from now, I pick up a script and I will find ways to edit my dialogue. That's why they always go like dialogue is the last thing you're going to write. And part of that is because it's such a tricky, tricky thing. So we said what it should and what it shouldn't do, right? So now dialogue here, I'd go, it should reveal character, as we discussed earlier. It should tell people what the character is, but at the same time, you cannot reveal everything in your dialogue. You can't have the character coming up and telling you what they are, but you have to use dialogue to show who they are. Next thing, your dialogue should have natural starts and stops. You should have dialogue where people talk like normal people, like how I'm talking now. I go, I go, ah. But at the same time, in film, you shouldn't have filler words. You know, we call them little like nothing words in between, because if you really follow, if you do a transcription of how people talk and you put it in a movie, it's going to be really boring because the way people actually talk is really boring. So if you look at what I've painted for you here, it's, you should do this, but then the opposite is true as well. You can't go here. You should, you know, have a natural way, but if it's too natural, it's not good, because the ridiculous thing is not realistic enough dialogue is a bad thing, but too realistic dialogue is also a bad thing. So this seems like an impossible task. So can it even be done? Of course it can be done. We've seen it being done in so many movies. But what we have to remember is that dialogue isn't real life speech. It's not like how people actually talk every day. It's actually stylized speech. It's the content that's important. What's being said has a real purpose for being in your script. Otherwise, you know, things like, hi, how are you? How are you doing today? What's the weather like? All those are things that everyday people speak or say when they meet each other. But it's not going to do very well in a movie, because what's the purpose? It is empty space. So what happens as a writer, as a person who's writing the dialogue of here, your goal is to make something that feels real, that feels like it's natural, that has got that flow and ebb of conversation, but at the same time, having content that is elevated, that has thrust to move the movie and the speech and everything forward, to move that whole scene forward. I wrote a little something here that kind of supposed to highlight the difference. The difference is between somebody going like, and in movies, people don't always tell you what they feel. And even in real life, you can go to somebody who, you know, think is angry with you and you go like, what's wrong? And they go, nothing, what's wrong? And it's nothing. And something's wrong, but they don't want to tell you what it is. So it's very rare for people to go like, I am so sad today. The whole world is against me. It's also very downbeat, very, you know, you kind of like are turned off by that. But if you have the same character, and it's the same meaning really, go, today sucks, the whole world sucks. There's a bit more of an active, a more stylized way of saying things. And it kind of draws you in because you kind of now want to know what happened to you. Why does today suck? Why does the world suck? So it's a very simple, just like something I wrote in like 2 seconds to kind of show the difference between something that is more real world, like I'm so sad, I'm so blue, we complain to our friends, and how you would do it in a movie to kind of draw the audience in. And even though we say like, it's gotta be natural, it's gotta be about something, I wanna share with you like examples now of movies from dialogues and dialogues from movies, sorry, dialogues from movies that actually exemplify this. And it's like 3 different types. Some are good, some are examples of what is good, some are examples of what, you know, not so good, and how the different types of writing styles actually complement the storytelling in terms of dialogue. And I think the first example I want to share with you is Pulp Fiction. Now, Pulp Fiction was written by Quentin Tarantino, also directed by him. And it's basically what we call a story that's almost like ontological, and you have different characters and different stories. Really, I think in here, there were maybe 4 major stories of lives that intersect. What I want to concentrate here is on Vincent Vega and what was Samuel L. Jackson's character's name? Jules Winfield. So Vincent Vega is John Travolta on top. Jules Winfield is Samuel L. Jackson at the bottom. And a style of Tarantino's is that he takes a very casual approach to it, but it's very organic. And at the same time, just very interesting. I mean, what is Vincent Vega talking about? He's talking about like, what do you call a burger in France? It's a very simple thing. And yet what it does is it paints character. It paints here somebody who's interested in food, somebody who wants to expand his horizons, you know, somebody who maybe travels or wants to travel. All this from just this conversation alone. All this from just talking about what do you call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris, you know what? So what is really amazing here, remarkable about Tarantino's work, is that he fills it with all this information that seems to be, you know, what we said before, have a purpose, that seems purposeless. It seems casual, throwaway, doesn't have a purpose, but in actual fact is revealing character, is revealing, is creating tone, like in the one at the bottom with Jules Winfield. He's interrogating this guy, and you know, it's a funny way of going, the guy keeps going, what? And he goes like, what ain't no country I've ever heard of? They speak English and what? And what you get is that tone of that moment, the impatience that these 2 guys aren't really nice guys. They're actually hitmen coming in to like get their money or get their thing that they want from this guy. And all that is conveyed in dialogue that is not about the scene itself. This is how you create not on the nose dialogue. Okay, and so this is Quentin Tarantino. Next, we'll have a look at another great writer, Aaron Sorkin. And Aaron Sorkin is very interesting in that if you look at his scripts, and you know what scripts look like, they're basically like dialogue, action lines, a lot of white pages, a lot of white space, I mean, but also a lot of action lines. One of the jokes in the industry is that with Aaron Sorkin, there's like no action lines because it's all dialogue, and that's crazy. But the thing with him is that his dialogue, his way of writing is he crams in a lot, and he does it very well, especially for biopics like this, The Social Network, because he's a very smart kind of bantery guy. He did the same with Trial of Chicago 7, which he also directed. And what you can tell from The Social Network, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, it's the movie of the real life story of Mark Zuckerberg. And back in 2003, when he actually created Facebook. And what it is all the kind of reasoning behind why he created it and the difficulties he faced in creating it legally and personally in the movie, which was covered beautifully by examples like this, where you pick the drama from it. Because if you look at the story, it might come across as very boring. He had legal troubles. How Aaron Sorkin does it is he showed, like, this is his partner, played by Andrew Garfield, who like has been cut out of the company. And so what he does is he comes in, he gets his attention, he takes the laptop, he slams it down. Again, another example of marrying showing, not telling to the gist of the story. And he goes like, you beep, 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 you better get a lawyer, because I'm not coming back for 30%, which is what they're trying to offer him. I'm coming back for everything. These are fighting words. These are, and there's this natural, this controlled restraint, anger, but it tells you the information. It tells you what's going to happen now. He's going to take him to the court. He's going to fight him for the percentage of shares in Facebook, which he feels that he created as well as Zuckerberg. So being able to have all that information in these few lines is an amazing thing. But Aaron Sorkin is a master of that. And I'll show you in the next scene where Mark Zuckerberg tries to go on a date. And if you see this, there's so much words here. She's trying to tell him why their date is not going well. Because, you know, if you're familiar with the movie, he basically, it's almost like a job interview. He asks her where she studies, she tells him where she studies, and he goes, oh, that's a lousy school. So, you know, you don't have to get up early tomorrow. You can like just, you don't have to study because you're going to a lousy school. And she comes back with, and I think the line before this, if you can read the dialogue there, it's, you're going to be a successful computer person, but you're going to go through life thinking girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that that won't be true. And what's the beauty of it is, because there's a pause, it goes to his reaction. And from her words, I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that that won't be true. It could go either way. It could be like, girls are going to like you. You're not a nerd. But it could also go the way that it really went. And she goes like, girls won't like you. It's not because you're a nerd. It'll be because you're an asshole.
Can I just say something here?
Yes.
So that you won't feel alone, because
Yes.
probably students are scared to ask question from a celebrity.
Oh.
But I noticed something here. You know, when you mentioned that, you give an example here, dialogue is like music. And while you were reading it just now, a thought came to my mind that it links with your previous point as well, that dialogue is not real conversations out there in life, isn't it? Because it's boring.
Yes.
So would you also say that dialogue has got to be beautiful? Because in real life, no girl will speak like this. They would straight away, you know, reject and
exactly
leave.
Like, forget it, I'll get my bag, I'll leave. I don't even.
So in a way, it has got to be beautiful, right? But not too beautiful.
Yes, it's got to be what we call heightened. It's got to be heightened, like music. What's the difference between music and noise? Music is beautiful. Noise is not. Noise is all around, but noise is jangly and harsh. But music, because of the combination of notes that you put in it, is pleasing to the ear. And you're absolutely right, Ezra. It's the same with dialogue.
Yeah, and music is structured, isn't it, compared to noise? Structured,
it's purposeful, and it has beats, and it should land beautifully on the ear.
Yeah. See, I'm learning too from you. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. But thanks for making that point. It's absolutely correct that it has to be beautiful. It has to flow. All these things. That's why I said again, writing dialogue is wonderful and terrible at the same time because of the weight that is there, all the things that it has to do. And I think that's a great segue for going into yet another different kind of dialogue, which is in the next movie, Sunset Boulevard. Now, this is an old movie. I think it came out in 1950. And here's another thing, like anybody here who's listening to this, watch movies, and not just movies that are out in the cinema now. Watch movies from whenever, from the start of cinema, because there's so much to be learned from that. So like what we can learn from this, the story about this is that you've got the lady below, Norma Desmond, is a fading starlet. She used to be huge in the 1920s or 30s or whenever, when there was silent pictures, and she was a silent film star. And now in the 1950s, she's aging, and you know, in Hollywood, if you age, it's like a bad thing, especially for women. So she is a fading star, and what she does is she meets this guy on top who's a screenwriter, and she wants to kind of like use him to write her movies that will kind of revitalize her career, to give her a comeback. And he, on the other hand, he wants to take advantage of her for this. Now, what's interesting about this movie when it starts is that you're going to see police cars and ambulances going past the roads to Sunset Boulevard, and it comes to this house, and it's a huge mansion, and there's a swimming pool, and that guy on top there, the screenwriter, he's floating face down in the swimming pool, quite dead. And then you hear a VO, you hear a voice, you hear dialogue, you hear a monologue, and it's his voice, and he's the dead guy. And this is an example of what Inja Azra and I was saying earlier about using it in a compelling way to push the story forward. I think there have been other instances where people have tried to use this to some success as well. There was a TV series, I think, back in the day called Desperate Housewives, where the first person you hear talking is the voice of the murdered friend. So it straight away, immediately, it creates that sense of mystery, that this is a mystery to be solved. That we know the ending, we know that the screenwriter dies, now we have to see how he gets there. And it's just, it's a wonderful usage of dialogue to set up tone, to talk about the themes of the kind of fragility of life, whether it's through aging or through ill health or death. These are themes that come out through this movie just from that usage alone.
Sorry
Now,
to interrupt again.
yes.
Renee, but this reminds me of a film that we watched on campus in class on the big screen, because most of the students in this class are also in the audience studies class, where it is actually about film studies, analyzing films as text. So that film, that particular film that I remember now is Taxi Driver.
Oh.
Yeah, the great Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro and also the small Jodie Foster at the time. Yeah. And if you remember, Renee, that the film started with his VO, isn't it? About his
Travis Bickle. Yes.
Yes. So you're right there when you say that, you know, VOs or monologues can be used in special circumstances to set the tone and also to reveal character, because he was very frustrated, isn't it, with his life, with New York.
Yes. Absolutely, that's a great example, Azrin. That is fantastic, because again, while personally I don't like using VO, I appreciate how it can be used really well, even in circumstances like pre-lapse and post-lapse, where the voice carries through into a scene from a previous scene. I think I, Tonya, starring Margot Robbie, and she won the Oscar for it, Allison Janney, they used examples of that. It's not full VOs because you see the people talking, but then it goes into a scene where it's a VO and you hear it's a continuation, pre-lapse and post-lapse. And it's a form of VO, but it's very well used. So there are instances where it can work very well. And Sunset Boulevard is one of those examples. I hope you guys get to watch this one day. And one of the things, the major things that I've mentioned a few times, and nowhere is this more apparent in your screenwriting than in dialogue, is the show don't tell rule. And I like to attach it to this because, like I told you guys before earlier, if you remember, she was a silent movie star. And in silent movies, they still had dialogue, but it was like in little like stills, in little text stills, which you had to read because there was no sound then. And so I picked two scenes where she goes, there's no dialogue. We didn't need dialogue. And most instances that is true. And one of the rules you should always remember, wherever you can, show. Don't use dialogue to tell. If you're going to use dialogue, use it to show as well, but never tell. Because, and you guys can read this, in silent movies, dialogue should always serve the story. The story doesn't exist so that you can showcase dialogue. It's always the other way around. And another trick is, if you've got a movie and you just listen to it, you don't watch it, and you can get the story, then I'm sorry, that's not a movie. What that is a podcast. It's because you can get the whole story just by listening to it. And film is a particular beast where dialogue helps you feel more, but you have to get the story from what you're watching. And now that we've tackled 3 good examples, let's go into stuff where maybe stuff that we should avoid. My first example is Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Now, I don't know if everybody's like, maybe you haven't watched it. This movie is about like how Anakin Skywalker actually starts romancing Padme, and this is 10 years after Phantom Menace. And the scene that I've picked here to discuss is kind of like where he's trying to woo her. He's trying to like, he wants to get closer to her. And I don't know about like any of you guys out there, if you like try to get close to somebody that you like, whether you would use this topic as a conversation starter, as an icebreaker, because what he does is he talks about sand, and he doesn't talk about it in a poetic way, although I believe that's what the point was. They wanted to make it like, you know, more like poetry, but it failed because it came off as really banal, which is, I don't like sand, you know, and then he describes sand, and then he describes how it's irritating and why. It's like he's describing a day at the beach. In all honesty, how that leads to them kissing after this, I have no idea. She must have really low standards. But the problem with this is that the conversation it's stilted. The worst thing you will find about bad dialogue is how unnatural it feels. How, as you're watching it, you start to feel really uncomfortable. And worse, here you get really bored, because I don't need somebody to describe what sand is to me. I know what sand is. And it's almost that it's pointless. So it's very important to avoid that unnatural and boring type of topics. Again, it's more, it has to sound natural. And when you're talking about a boring topic and you're doing it in an unnatural way, it just compounds the problem. And that it doesn't only appear here. I think when he's it's like if somebody loves somebody else, it's sometimes the more you love that person, the harder it is to tell them. Like if you have a crush and you really, it's a huge crush on that person, it's kind of difficult to tell them even like, I kind of like you, I like you, you know. But here in another scene, Anakin tells her like, I love you. I love you. I wish I could wish these feelings away. I mean, even saying it makes me feel very uncomfortable, because nobody talks that way. Nobody's going to talk that way in those circumstances. Real human beings don't. So this is an example of how that works against you. The next one is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And I don't think many people have watched this movie. I've played the games. I haven't really watched the movie, but it's a story about how every generation, this other world portal opens into Earth. And so the outer world lord from there wants to take over the Earth. And what happens here is the woman below, Sindel, gets killed in the movie earlier. And Kitana, the woman above, is her daughter. So when she's resurrected and she comes back, we know Kitana knows that she was killed earlier. So why is she standing there going like, "Mother, you're alive?" And that's what we call on the nose. It's there. You've already shown. Of course she's alive. She's standing right there, isn't she? Why are you stating the obvious? But we know why. The reason why they were going for here is they wanted to make it really dramatic. If anything, the mother's reply of, "Too bad you will die," makes it so much worse. But what they were going here for was to build tension. It's like that shock of like the daughter realizing that the mother is alive, and then the mother blaming the daughter and wanting to kill her. So it goes for dramatic tension, but it ends up being unintentionally funny. If you're going to be funny in film, do it on purpose. Never do it because like you wrote something that was on the nose, that was obvious. So this is an example of really on the nose, saying what you're seeing and saying what you mean dialogue. If I'm going to kill you, I'll just kill you. I don't have to tell you. I don't know if you're familiar with those. It's not so much for the James Bond series now, but in the earlier movies of James Bond, the villain would have this long monologue where he would describe how he would kill James Bond, therefore giving James Bond the time to escape. So it's similar to that. One tip is like, you could think of it like, is this a James Bond villain moment? If like I want to like do something, am I actually shooting myself in the foot by giving away too much information? That's one thing to keep in mind. And the last example that I want to share with you guys is the amazing Pearl Harbor by Michael Bay. And I say amazing because if you guys aren't familiar with the story, Pearl Harbor was this harbor in Hawaii that was bombed by the Japanese in World War II. And which got the US into the war. Now, this story actually doesn't talk about that story, it doesn't talk about the history of it. It's actually the setting for a love triangle. And in this love triangle, you have this guy, Ben Affleck, Rafe, who's childhood friends with Josh Hartnett, I forget his character name. And Rafe, the Ben Affleck is in love with Kate Beckinsale. But he goes off to war. He wants to become like a huge fighter pilot or whatever. And so he leaves her behind with his best friend, and they start to like, get close to each other, but then he comes back. So that's what this story about. It's a love triangle just set against World War II. Now, the problem with this isn't all of that, isn't that it's set against a period drama and doesn't really talk about that period. It's the words, if you look, that they use. It's like, "You are so beautiful, it hurts." What hurts is maybe that line, because and then she goes like, "It's your nose that hurts." We can all see that his nose is plastered. It's probably broken. Again, you're stating the obvious, and it's very unnatural. It becomes awkward because like that's supposed to be cute or funny. It just doesn't get there, because also you're wasting time because you're showing what is already there. And all those things like, "It's your nose that hurts." "Oh no, I think it's my heart is breaking." All those words, the reason why we feel so uncomfortable with it is because we've heard it before. It's almost become cliched, it's stale. And as a result, because it doesn't feel original in that moment, it takes you away from it and it kills emotion.
We also say that this is an unsuccessful attempt at trying to be beautiful with the dialogue.
Trying to be
beautiful.
Yes, exactly. The irony is he uses the word beautiful in there. Yeah. And just because he says you're beautiful, it doesn't mean that it is beautiful. You're absolutely right. It is trying to take it to a place of poetry, like the sand thing in Star Wars, trying to make it beautiful. But sand can be beautiful. The flowing of sand through an hourglass, representing the passage of time and the fleetingness of life. It can be beautiful, but not the way that it was done. So the purpose, the intent of dialogue is sometimes even more important than how do you say it? It is as important as the presentation of it, because the purpose has to lie in the presentation of it. Yeah. So now that you've seen these examples of, what dialogue should and shouldn't do, let's just quickly go on to some tips, techniques that I use in my everyday life. And before I go into that, I just want to share something that Aaron Sorkin, the creator of West Wing, the writer of Social Network, he won an Oscar for that, best adapted screenplay, and the Trial of Chicago 7. He says dialogue is the least teachable part of writing. It's also the most personal part of writing. Now, I don't say this to make you, to discourage you or go like, oh no, you can't be taught. Oh no, I won't be. No, it's like least teachable, but it is learnable. You can learn it. But the key to unlocking that, I believe what he means is in the second part, if you dig into the personal aspect of yourself, if you are truthful with yourself and you find your personal voice, you'll be able to write dialogues that's natural, that's great, that's appropriate, that's suitable, that sings. You'd be able to do that, but you have to unlock it in your own self. And a lot of that is practice. A lot of that is watching as many good movies as you can, reading as many screenplays as you can, but to open up that personal part of yourself. And then you'll be able to really open up your mind to be able to learn how to write dialogue. Now, things to keep in mind. These are stuff like once you've learned it and you start doing it, it's going to become part of you. The emotion, you always, as what we mentioned just now with Pearl Harbor, it was supposed to convey a form of emotion, but you have to understand what the emotional context of what you want to say is, and understand that, again, like what we said about Star Wars, that sometimes what is being said is not the same as what is being felt. And that is where subtext lives. And subtext is basically the feeling behind the words. It's not told in the words directly, but it is the feeling behind it. And you need to understand the emotion that's driving that. Next, be specific. Specificity is key. Not just for, here I put in like the specific goal for your scene. You need to know where it's going and where it came from, where it's going to, which will advance the plot. But it also helps you know how the character fits into that. And dialogue will actually reveal that without being, and when I say specific, I mean specific about your knowledge, not specific about what you're writing on the screen. Do not give the game away. Do not write like, I am going here now. No, that's not what dialogue is. It's like the intention behind it. It's like, you know, I need to get somewhere. Things like that. You need to be concise. Again, don't use empty words. Don't use like, hello, how are you? If you notice in a lot of movies, when people put down the phone, they don't say goodbye. In real life, you go like, hey, bye, you know, but in movies, you very seldom see that. You just go like, okay, this, and then that's it. It's because these are like, the pacing of it will actually harm the strength of your dialogue. Show visuals when it's better too. The next one is to exposit, and by that I mean like to expound, to build upon what the information you need to give. So certain information you need to have exchange hands into the audience to understand where the plot is going. If somebody is going to hire somebody to kill somebody else, that needs to come across. But you need to have the characters not tell people that. They don't exist just to say like, oh, you know, you can buy a hitman for like how much dollars, whatever. You have to be smart about painting the picture. It's like, I have a problem. You know what's an easy way to get rid of that? It's basically them kind of not dancing around the issue, but painting a picture with a forward momentum towards it. So you have to share the information, but don't, for heaven's sakes, don't have your characters just tell people the information, because film is about communication. And it's not just you telling your audience, it's kind of like engaging them in a two-way communication. I give you this much, you are already forming ideas of where this is going in your head. And that is far more fulfilling. And one of the last things you must always remember is to read what you've written. Read it out loud, not just in your mind, in your heart. Read it out loud, read it a few times, because then when it comes out your mouth, it can hit your ear. And when it hits your ear, you can tell very quickly whether or not it is working, whether or not it sounds false, it sounds weird, it sounds like, you know, I love you kind of dialogue, which just doesn't flow. It actually stops the story short. I don't know if there's any animators out there, but if there are, you know that like when we're animating and we sometimes have a mirror there so that we can see how it looks, so that we can copy, like, okay, that looks real, so I can use that to animate like that. Do that with your screenwriting. When you're test driving your dialogue, have a mirror there. Look how you look when you're saying those words, because it sounds really cool in your mind. Sometimes words, they don't come out of the mouth like there have been instances where I kind of tripped over my words as well. They don't come out of the mouth so smoothly. But if you look in the mirror and you see as you are talking, you can see the shapes it makes, how it sounds, how it looks. These are things that will help you write dialogue that actors will love, that they'll be able to pull off because you've already kind of taken it for a test drive. It's not just something that's cool in your mind. You know it works because you've seen it work. Okay, so those are like some of the things that I do that you guys might want to try as well. And just like these are the things to keep in mind, here are things to avoid. Avoid the info dump. And the info dump, what I mean by that is like giving all the information straight away, having the characters, it ties back to what I said earlier about the exposit, which is basically not having your character just put a whole bunch of information on the audience. That's not fair to them. It's not fair to the characters. Don't sermonize, because nothing turns a person off as much as people trying to preach to them. It's like, it's a bit disrespectful. Like I said, respect your audience and your readers, because they're going to know, if you've done a good job, they're going to be following you on your story. Another thing is jargon and tech language. And by jargon, I mean like, buzzwords in like financial district or like medical terms or tech language like computers. I'm not saying don't use them. You're going to need to use them if you're talking about, like, if you set a scene in a hospital and they're like having surgery and, hand the scalpel, push like 5 whatever of Mexabedran or whatever, you're going to need to use technical language, but don't make the whole thing about the technical language. Always be mindful that end of the day, technical language, while giving your scene some authenticity, you don't want it to detract from it when people start losing interest. Next thing, of course, is don't be obvious. Don't write on the nose dialogue. If you're going to do it, don't say you're going to do it, just do it, or foreshadow it, but don't just say what you mean, say what you think, because that robs the subtext, that doesn't invite. Again, it comes back to sort of like preaching to your audience. The next thing I want to tell you to avoid is identical twins or triplets or whatever. You're going to have more than, even if you have one character, it's very, you're going to have more than one character in your films, in your stories, and don't make them sound alike. And what I mean is, I shared with Adjunct, I had this trick I used to do when I first started writing, when I first started learning to write, was I'd give certain words to certain characters. They spoke, they had like those words. And it's an easy way to do it. But as you get stronger, what you are going to do is these characters become very distinct. If this person speaks that way and that person speaks the same, it's going to be not only boring, it's going to make it seem as if they're, why did you need 2 characters then if they sound the same way? They have their own motivations. Why shouldn't they have their own voices as well? Okay. Another thing to avoid is peace. Everything in your story, including dialogue, is based on conflict. So even if it's the smallest thing in a scene, the dialogue shouldn't be like, hey, I think this food is really good. Yeah, this food is really good. Oh, I think I want to order seconds. Yeah, I'm going to order second. That's so boring. But a simple scene, 2 people go into an elevator, a lift, and one person goes like, can I go 10th floor, please? And the other person goes, I'm going to the basement. And they go like, no, but this is going up. No, it's going down, or there's nothing here. Already, very simply, there's conflict. It starts to get like, oh, okay, who's going to win? Who's going to lose? What are they going to do? Instead of people just agreeing all the time. You do not want peaceful dialogue. You want, and I'm not saying fight. Nobody wants you to fight, but everything, like the purpose, the content is driven by conflict. So have your dialogue reflect that. And the last thing is just a summarization of everything, which is like things to avoid: sweat. As in, like, don't sweat the small stuff. There's so much information that you'll feel is important that the only way to get through to your audience is the dialogue. So you must include every single thing. If you don't explain it, they won't understand it. No. If you've done your job right, if you've shown as much as you've told them, they will be able to understand it. They will be able to follow. So less is more. And leave all the small stuff behind. So what if you don't have it? If you've done your job right, if you've made them feel the way that you need them to feel, they will get the picture. Okay, so don't sweat it. And on that note, I'm gonna, like, because I said I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. I said that I use these things in my personal work. So this is a real life example. This is a script that I'm writing right now. Like, after I finish this, I'm gonna go back and continue writing it. And in this scene, actually, I think there's two here, but the top scene is...
Sorry, Renee. Sorry
Yeah.
to pause you there. I just want to announce to the students, because we have to take attendance, that attendance is open now. And I have just posted the attendance code in the chat box. So students, please take your attendance now. Okay, sorry, Renee. Continue.
No problems. So do they need to do something, and then I'll just wait for like a minute?
No, you keep on talking. They just,
okay.
Yeah.
So in this scene, as you can see on the right, to give you some backstory, it's during the war. And in this scene, this enemy soldier, stumbles upon a spy who's actually this woman who's helping this pregnant woman give birth. Now, this scene only has 3 people. It has the soldier that showed up, it has the pregnant woman who is in the midst of labor, and it has the female spy. Now, bear in mind, this is on page 49, and I have not concealed the identity of this spy. Tessa, everybody who has been reading from page 1, well, maybe not page 1, but from whatever page to 49 knows she's a spy. So if we read this, it goes, the pregnant woman lets out a shriek. I can't read it there, so I'm going to read it here. She's staring over Tessa's shoulder. When Tessa turns, Hans quickly trains his rifle on her. Tessa, let me get her through this, yeah? Hans, in German, I know I speak a little German, but it won't help us yet. It goes, it's you. You're the English spy. Another scream, this time from labor pains. Hans startles, then pales. Hans, help her. Tessa gets back to work. So in this scene, I wrote this, and I have to edit this. I have to change this. So when I showed this to Inja Azrin, he said, like, it might be fun if you guys could kind of figure out what I need to change here. Anybody? Everybody's taking attendance.
This class is rather shy, Renee.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. So basically, some of you would have got it. And if you got it but don't speak up, then you're going to kick yourself because you're going to look so smart, right? But here's the thing. When Tessa goes, let me get her through this, and Hans goes, it's you. You're the English spy. Okay, here's the thing. I already told you guys. The readers know she's a spy. I've not concealed it at all. The only 3 people in the room is Hans, who has now discovered she's a spy, is Tessa, who knows she's the spy, and that pregnant woman who, like, either she knows Tessa's a spy or not, doesn't really care, because at that moment, she's pushing a baby out. So who is Hans talking to when he says, you're the English spy? Why is that necessary? Why do we need to have something like that?
Renee, our student Alec wrote something there in the chat, if you could see. His suggestion is better Hans just shoot the ground next to them.
That's a good solution. Oh, that's a good idea, actually, to add it to put in the drama. I mean, even, you know what, it really works, Alex. Like, because he's startled when she screams, he accidentally shoots, right?
Yeah, can.
That's great. That is a great idea. Thank you for that. I'm not paying you, but I love it.
It's yours now already.
Alex, that's a great idea, because I think what you read there was because when she screams, he gets startled. And when you get startled and you've already got your gun cocked, that happens, right? And that just adds to it. And it shows that state of confusion. Show, don't tell. But what I was going for was that whole line, "You're an English spy." Really, Alex, do I need that?
You really don't, because you're just showing, as you said, the script, the Tessa is the spy, everyone knows, the audience is clear. Have the soldier just do an action. As you said, better Han shoot the ground, as firstly, he's scared of the shrieking. Secondly, it's a spy. You don't know what they're capable of. I can't pronounce. The German might be scared shitless because, you know, it's a spy who's been eluding the government for so long. Better be cautious than anything.
That's brilliant. You see, that's it. This is an example of show, don't tell. All of this is unnecessary. That's why I took pains to tell you guys there's nobody else there. Who the hell is he telling this to? Why does he need to even like do all that? Wherever you can show it. That was really good. Thank you so much, Alex. Like I said, again, I'm not going to pay you, but if I ever see you, I'll buy you a drink. All these witnesses, that was really good. That was really good, Alex.
Yes, actually, for better, Han shoots the ground, pause, another scream, it snaps everyone out, sort of drops the, no dialogue from Hans anymore, just drops the gun and helps the woman, like brings out a flask of water to, you know, wash the hands and just continue. Pause the conflict.
That does actually make it even more like to just show not tell. But we have painted earlier, and this is because like it's in the earlier scenes that Hans is on that cusp of like he wants to help the people who are not like German, but at the same time he's very German.
Is this like, so I'm sorry, is this like the is this his want or is this his goal?
Is this his what?
Is this what he wants? Or is this the conflict you presented earlier?
It's humanity, because we've seen instances before this where he's been really brutal, but it's not him. He's just pissed at being in this war. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to be back home with his wife and kid. So, but that could work as well, an instance of like kindness. I like it. I like it. I'm definitely gonna consider that. But that's a great example. Alex has given great examples of how you can show and not tell and have that dramatic moment come up. And see, these are the tips that all the little techniques that we've been talking about. This is where it comes to play as you're writing dialogue, as you're thinking less is more. So thank you, Alex. And on that note, because Alex made such a great point of that, I'm going to show you this so that everybody understands this is the way to go. I mentioned it several times. I truly believe that this elevates all storytelling in film because we're talking about film. Like I said, we're not making a podcast here. We're making film. So that's it for dialogue. Thank you to everybody.
Yeah, so Renee, that last note there, show don't tell. It's tough, I have to admit, because as a teacher, I keep telling them this, show don't tell, show don't tell, show don't tell, and they've handed in their first assignment. They nod, you know, do you understand? Yes, we do, but they still do it, okay? And it's not just them. Over many years of teaching, I find it difficult as a teacher. And also, number two, as a writer myself, sometimes it slips, right? We don't notice. So I think the most difficult thing is this, show don't tell.
It is tough. It's like, we know it, but look, I mean, I'm a professional writer and my first knee-jerk reaction is to like tell too much, to overwrite, on a first draft. I do this, but then that's why it's also rewriting is writing. So then as you go again, and I'd like to think one day that I would have like gone to where Alec went to and like understand that, oh, this is a better way to do it. And you would probably get there, just take longer. But if you keep going back to it and you keep working it and understand that show don't tell, you won't get it. Most people don't get it right off the bat when you first write your draft.
Yeah, it takes practice, isn't it?
It does. And even with practice, that's why we say all writing is rewriting. Because it takes that time again, looking at it, Like I'd have to put this script away after I've written it and then come back to it and then see all the flaws that might be there.
Yeah, and also as what you practice with your writer friends in Hollywood, and
Yes.
as what we do, you know, me and you, is to have this practice of letting others read your script, because it's very easy to spot mistakes or flaws in others, but we can never see in ours, isn't it? It's like we're blind somehow.
Because you're too close to it. You just created it. I mean, one of the ways you can do is like, and what I like to do is put it away for a week or two. But most people, I ask my friends and it doesn't work for them. For me, is like, I actually forget that I wrote it. So to me, it's not that I know I wrote it and I can remember parts of it, but I don't remember the whole of it. So I'm able to see it again with new eyes. But it's always helpful when somebody else sees it because they didn't create it. It's new to them. So straight away, anything that doesn't work, whether it's unnatural dialogue or too much dialogue or stuff will jump out at them. And oh, okay. I was reading what Alec.
Are you still into that?
And it really does help to have a trusted group of friends.
Yep.
They can be fellow writers. They can just be people who really love film. Like one of my best readers is my best friend. And he's, what is he? He's an MBA student. He doesn't like, you know, he's not in film. He's not in the creative line, but he can analyze things. He can pick up things that I can't in my own work. And his suggestions, like Alex, makes it stronger and better. So yes, do share your work. Like, don't be afraid of doing that.
Yeah. So we've actually gone slightly over
yes.
2 o'clock, okay? But if you still have a bit of time, perhaps we can open up questions to a few students.
There's actually some really interesting questions here. Like I just saw
you're
that.
reading the chat, yeah?
Yeah. Let me, oh, I can't. What's up? Okay, there it is.
Interesting there from Meng Sam.
From yes.
You want to speak, Meng Sam? Not every day you can speak to someone from Hollywood, you know, I'm giving you the chance.
Yeah, but yeah, for when writing a script or something, it's very hard to begin because if like think of the like whether the action is it like showing or telling. So I'm very confusing at first when writing, and then Mr. Adrian also like keep on telling us, oh, this is show, this is telling, not showing. I'm like, oh no, it's telling. Yeah,
I know how you feel, Meng Sam, because it's like, and it's a terrible thing because you kind of like before you can even start, you've already been stopped because there's so many things to think of, right? I want to ask you, when you come up with like a script, the story, it comes to you, right? You have the concept or the idea or like a rough germ of the idea.
yeah.
And then what happens? Do you get scenes? Do you get like scene ideas, little small scenes, or the story starts filling out? What happens?
It's like when I think of the scene, right? I know what I'm going to like play in the film, but just that I don't know what word can use to replace the showing and it's not telling, something like that. So I'm just, yeah.
I think in that case, one of the best things you can do is write what you think. Just don't stop. Just write it. Just like, even if you think like it's the wrong word or whatever, just write it first. And then remember that trick I told you, have a mirror. And go like, that looks really bad, or that doesn't feel right. And then worry about it. Don't worry when you're writing, just write. Just free yourself. There's no wrong, there's no right. Just write the thing. But after you've done it, don't think like, oh, this is perfect. Take it, test it. Test drive it, look in the mirror, see how it looks, hear how it sounds. You will be able to tell because you know the story so well. You know what you're supposed to do here. When the word comes out and it's like, oh, that's oh,
yeah.
Sometimes you feel that, right?
Yeah, true, true.
Yeah.
Like when I'm writing, I didn't like realize that actually it's telling. I just like go through what I'm thinking in my mind and then just write. And then when I read through one more time, it's like, oh wait, this is not showing. This
Yes,
is telling. So I was like,
I'm telling, oh no, what am I gonna do here? And then when that happens, when you realize that, what you do is you start kind of playing around with different ideas of how that scene, even though you've written it, can totally change to tell to show it the way that you want to show it. It will happen because once you know it doesn't work, it frees you up to like, maybe I can do it different ways. Not even just by changing the dialogue, but actually just changing what happens in the scene. Have that freedom, give yourself that freedom. I know it can feel really like when you're writing it, oh my goodness, you know,
Yeah.
especially if you have deadlines. But feel free to test it out and kind of like give yourself the opportunity to open up your mind. Sometimes you write that, what you wrote, it is considered like the starting point for you to go somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Got it.
That
Thank
was
you,
a really good
Renee.
question, by the way.
Yeah, I like the ones your autograph, Renee.
Oh, but I already promised him a drink.
Yeah, and for everybody's information, this is not set in stone yet, but all of you should know that we're having our next or our third Taylor's University Film Festival, and of course, Miss Renee was involved last time, and the plan is to get her involved again. And the plan, okay, it's not confirmed, is to get her to come to campus and do a forum with not just her but other writers as well. Perhaps if I could get my ex-classmate John from London, who's a British writer, and another adjunct professor as well from Taylor's, who's also a writer, filmmaker. But this is not set in stone yet, yeah, students. So if that happens, it's going to happen early March. So even you've done with this module, you can still come, and probably you can meet Miss Renee in person.
That's when, yeah, I hope Alec shows up because then at least I can like
Yeah.
thank him properly.
Yeah. Okay. So students, we need to end this session because this is the lecture session, as you know, from actually 1 to 2. We've gone over 2 o'clock now. I will need to end this and then give it a few 1 minute. Click the usual link again, and then we will start the tutorial for group 1. Okay, so I hope students can understand that. This is not the tutorial yet. It's just that we're spilling over the lecture. So before we say thank you to our adjunct professor, Renee, perhaps one more question from anybody, if you're up to it, Renee?
Yeah. What time is it? Oh yeah, I've got some time.
Yeah, one more question from anybody. Not Alec, not Meng Sam.
Yeah. No, I must have covered everything. So
Yeah, don't know what else to say, isn't it? Okay, I'm counting till 5. This is what I always do when they all. Okay, there's one there from Elle.
okay.
We call her Elle.
Elle.
Probably she's shy to speak. How would you write a dialogue for an awkward scene?
Like it was supposed to be awkward?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know her story that she's working on, Renee. If she didn't change it, it's similar to, remember the famous 5 in Blyton?
Uh-huh.
You know, when we were kids. So her story is like the Malaysian famous 5, a group of friends taking an adventure, and it's supposed to be horror. You know, that's her story.
Horror.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds really awesome. That actually sounds awesome because and kind of marketable.
Yeah, so how would you write dialogue for awkward scenes?
Like already, first of all, always look at writing the scene, as in like not even the dialogue yet. Like in my case, my scenes unfortunately come fully formed with dialogue. When it comes into my head, it's like the whole setup. There's dialogue or no dialogue, it's the scene. But if you're going to write something funny, or awkward or supposed to make you a bit like cringy. Okay, I want to get back to that usual suspects thing as well, but what you do is you basically concentrate on the scene, do the setup, and once you realize the setup is awkward, it's always kind of nice to, or better to show the awkwardness, and then the dialogue can be a lot of like, because it's hard to go off without any more information. But if it's, let's say it's like two people, and you know, what is, can you share a little bit about what the scene is about, the awkward scene?
Hi, Miss Renee. Yeah, of course. So my story is basically like a group of friends going ghost hunting, but the main character, his name is Ryan. He likes one of the girls in his group, and her name is Emma. And out of like, I don't know, we use the word simp, like he's a simp for her.
I know, I'm familiar with for her, right? Yeah.
He's a simp for her, and he does like everything to show off his power and like, you know, but he's a clumsy boy. So yeah, and then when something bad happens, what I'm thinking is that when like this bad thing happens, he's going to confess to her on the spot.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. I mean, like, again, the build up to it could be, you know, him looking for that moment to do it. I love the fact that he's so like clumsy, because you can actually work that in as well. One of the best awkward scenes just off the top of my head is basically as he's trying to confess, he's being clumsy about it. He's like trying to stand somewhere and it's like, you know, falling off. Just have physicality be part of it, since you've made it such a major part of his character, his clumsiness. And he's simping for her and he's like trying to like get it out. And I like the fact that because this is my last chance to tell you, he wants to rush it out. That's another way you could handle it. Like he rushes it out really fast. She doesn't hear it because he said it so fast. So just playing around with it, like even like that quick blurt out of his feelings for her that she doesn't hear, that's really awkward. Because it's like, it was so hard for you to get it out the first time and now you have to repeat yourself. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's so many ways you can do that. But I love the setup. I love the characterization that you've done. And that is a goldmine of opportunity for you to. So always write, always how you approached it was perfect, actually. You had all the building blocks. You're writing an awkward scene. You've already created an awkward character. Be true to how he would do it and have her react. Because the drama is in the reaction.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Miss Renee.
Thank you for sharing that. That was awesome.
Okay, I think we will have to end this.
Yeah.
now. Yeah. And thank you, Renee, for going.
I enjoyed this. I'm enjoying this part a lot.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the usual suspects, but
Yeah. Unfortunately, Miss Renee is so busy. It is actually fortunate to be able to get her this semester. We've been planning this for months actually, and she finally got a date for it. And so thank you again, Renee. Unfortunately, she can only come in once a semester in a module because of a busy schedule. But we will try and make that forum for the festival happen. It'll be more exciting. So again, thank you, Renee. And last words from you before we end this and say goodbye for now.
Okay. Thank you for having me, guys. I really enjoyed it, especially when I got to talk with all of you. I hope this helps you out a bit. This is what I do, and when I'm writing stuff, when we're going into production, these are all the tips and tricks that I use to try and get those stories out there and showing it and not telling it. So I want to thank each and every one of you. And I really do hope that I get to meet you guys in person one day, because we're not even sure if I'll be available to come in, right? Hopefully. Yeah. But thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for talking with me.
Okay, so that's it for this one. Students, I will end this, but those in group 1, give it 1 minute and click again on the same link for the tutorial. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.